Something seems off about my room. I wonder what it could be. Can't for the life of me think about what it could be. Oh. That's what's wrong. All the swords fell over. They like to fall over at random intervals. Let me fix them. Well, I fixed the swords, and I remembered that I bought a new Keyblade recently. I know it's technically not Digimon adjacent, but this is a Digimon video. But I just wanted to show off my new Keyblade. It is the Oblivion Keyblade, which is kind of, it looks a tad more on the evil side, but it's not. If I remember correctly, you just get this in Castle Oblivion at some point, and it's just a nice other Keyblade for you to use throughout the course of the game. It's kind of cool looking. I like it. And I'll put it back in the background. Okay, so this video for Digimon is one that I kind of mentioned that I wanted to do a while ago, but I finally got around to it. So this video is going to be about the Dark Ocean, which in the Digimon lore is where Kari gets, Kari keeps getting dragged to at times, or where Ken kind of started to fully start his path down the line of becoming the Digimon Emperor, which I will be talking about throughout the course of this video. So the basics that we know about the Dark Ocean, or the World of Darkness, or the Quantum Sea is another variation of what it's called, is another area within the digital world's realm. There is, of course, the main part of the digital world, which is where we spend the majority of the series. There is the Dark Ocean, and then there's, of course, the Dark Ocean, which you can travel to kind of either directly or via the digital world. And then there's the World of Dreams, which I don't know, maybe I'll do a video about that one where Oikawa takes the kids at the end of the second season and everything, because he messed up getting into the digital world, and they got sent there instead. But one of the things that we see about the Dark Ocean, or one of the things that we learn about it, is that it is supposed to invert the natural order of things, and it brings twisted thoughts to life, magnifies and corrupts them, and then it uses that to invert people. We see it do a very good job with this with Ken. So I'm assuming that what happened with Ken is that, Oikawa found him, and he'd already been infected with the Dark Spore when he was a kid, during one of his first trips to the digital world. And then later on, that hadn't quite started to develop yet. And then after his brother Sam died, then it started to develop more and more and more. And then via certain manipulations, via Oikawa, he did end up going into the Dark Ocean, found his way to the Dark Realm, Quantum Sea, whatever you want to call it. Not the Quantum Realm, that is Marvel. That's where Ant-Man goes. So we see a lot of that happen, but what we see happen for Ken is that he goes there, and then he, takes his regular Digivice and he puts it in the water, and that's when it turns into the black, newer version of the Digivice. But one of the other things that we see about the Quantum Realm is that it's ruled by a specific being that is called Dragomon, which is this giant Cthulhu-looking Digimon. Which I love the reference to, Cthulhu or the Ancient Ones, or whichever variation you want to do it. I've never read H.P. Lovecraft. I don't think I could handle it. They're not for me. But yeah, I know that Cthulhu is this giant destructive monster. And I know that there are other types of Cthulhu-esque type monsters that are part of the, the H.P. Lovecraft world that he, wrote about and developed and everything. But this Digimon, specifically Dragomon, is very much based on Cthulhu. It's even specifically stated in a lot of the notes about the Digimon that it is based on Cthulhu itself. And Dragomon is this, giant evil type Digimon that lives like in the depths of the Quantum Sea of the Dark Ocean. And he, emerges a couple of times. We never really get like an extremely good look at him during the actual series of Digimon Adventure. We learn about him a little bit more in like the games, or in like the card game that they do for the card game for Digimon, or like even the video games that you can play. You learn a little bit more about him there. And he, he is the ruler of the third dimension between the real world and the digital world. And we also learn that the control spires that, of course, Ken uses to, kind of, adjust the digital world's border and to control the Digimon in the digital world with the control spires and the dark rings and the dark spirals. Those control spires came from the Dark Ocean. Obikawa says that, the dark spires were just a means of, a distraction for you from the Dark Ocean to keep you busy, type of thing, while he carried out other plans. And there is also a dark whirlpool in the digital world that we see at one point during the second season, when Ken is trying to gather up enough energy to dark energy to be able to bring Chimeramon to life. And the dark whirlpool is kind of thought to be this another entrance into the Dark Ocean, that you can go through that and then you'll end up in the Dark Ocean area. So we see references to that throughout the course of the second season, mainly is where they deal with the Dark Ocean. But a little bit more on Dragomon. As I said, he is this sea animal, Digimon. He's based on Cthulhu. Is it's kind of the evil god is called the deprived monk of the deep, or the sinful priest of the dark floor. I mean, like, hey, that's a nice title to go with. I mean, it's like, hey, that's gonna scare someone. I'm sure it will. That'll definitely scare someone. But his intention is to, of course, just like with most of the other evil Digimon out there, he wants to, of course, corrupt the world. Whether or not he would be okay with just letting, like, Malamyotismon do it for him, and then, like, destroying Malamyotismon and taking over. Since the Digidestins never really fight Dragomon, I'm assuming at some point they would pull out, last-ditch effort, all of them working together in their, highest forms, either digivolving all together to form Omnimon Merciful Mode, or just all of them in their full forms together, would be able to defeat him. Is probably one of the, just one of the basics. Yeah, they could defeat him. He's just some type of digital god in that world. But he supposedly evolved from a computer virus that was a deleted computer virus that would then infect the computers aboard ships, and then make them, knock out their direction and their course out of order, so they would end up crashing and, dying or whatever, because that's just what he wanted to do. He's also referred to as the Dark Undersea Master, and his henchmen are these Scubamon who worship him. And they're also, the Scubamon are also kind of, they're enslaved by, they're not enslaved by him, but they work for him, but they also turn into these more shadowy looking creatures that we see interact with Kari when she gets dragged to the Dark Ocean. So kind of the little bit of the history of the Dark Ocean, and I went over these a little bit, is way back in the first season when Matt's off on his own and he has, all the issues that he has to deal with like, I don't feel like I'm as good as Tai. I don't feel like I should be part of the group. When Matt's on his, lone wolf phase at that point in time in the series, after him and Tai had their big fight during the Dark Masters setup and everything, and when he's off on his own, he goes into this, very depressive, very, very depressive state. And it's kind of, he, becomes so depressed that he ends up kind of getting transported into the, world of darkness. Now, he never makes his way to the Dark Ocean, because the Dark Ocean just happens to be a portion of the world of darkness, but Matt is still trapped in this cave. And having Gabumon there, Gabumon is able to, make him come to his senses and pull him back out of that. And then Sora ends up in a very similar situation, because she is still very much, too many things going on in her head, too many dark thoughts going on in her head. And, as I mentioned, there's dark setups in the digital world that feed off of that, and that's the dark world, the world of darkness, the Dark Ocean setup. And Sora ends up getting pulled into a cave type thing as well, and then Joe and Matt and TK are the three that kind of pull her out of that. And that's kind of the basic thing that happens with that in the first season. We don't really do too much else with it until we get to season 2, when we get some flashbacks from Ken. You know, Obikawa has like guided Ken to the Dark Ocean after the death of his older brother, after the death of Sam, as I mentioned. And then Ken, you know, takes his Digivice, as I said, and puts it in the Dark Ocean, and it changes into the D3. And then this is where it very much, you know, the dark spore that's been inside of him for the past couple of years, between when he went to the Digital World the first time and then now, you know, after his brother died, when he goes to the World of Darkness, um, that's when, you know, the dark spore very much has the ability to start, you know, taking root and growing. And it's, you know, kind of, you know, nurtured, unfortunately, by the World of Darkness. And by having kind of Oikawa whispering in Ken's ear. And that's how Ken, you know, changes into the Digimon Emperor. He gets, you know, shifted that way via, you know, certain aspects outside of his control. Now, it is stated, of course, later on by Ken himself that, yeah, the dark spore is still always going to be inside of him because it can't be removed. But, you know, there's the dark spore that's always going to be inside of him, and the copies of the dark spores are always going to be inside of the other dark spore children that I mentioned. But as he stated, as long as they don't focus on the bad thoughts, as long as they, you know, have hope, and as long as they're able to focus on the good things, then the dark spores won't have the chance to grow. As I've also stated, I really hope that they have like a Digidestined support group for those kids, because you get a couple of those kids having some really bad times, and you get a bunch of dark spores growing, and that's not gonna be good. That's not gonna be good. Oh, great, the doors in the hallway are haunted again. And then the next time, the main introduction that we get to the Dark Ocean is, of course, via Kari. One of the episodes that they have in season 2 is called, I think it's called His Master's Voice or something like that. And what happens is Kari ends up getting pulled into the Dark Ocean. She keeps having this very bad day, and it's not like she's specifically, like, it's not like people are being mean to her or anything like that at the school. It's just that she keeps feeling very, very, I guess hollow would be a good way of putting it. She ends up, you know, having like illusions and like seeing things, and like she ends up literally like phasing out into the Dark Ocean. And she's, you know, because she's holding too much inside of her, too much responsibility, too many dark thoughts, not, you know, sharing them with her friends or with her brother or her parents or even with Gatomon. This is, of course, during the time frame when they're still dealing with Ken, when he's the Digimon Emperor at this point in time. And, you know, she ends up getting dragged into the Dark Ocean world, and she kind of wanders around, and then she finds these Scubamon that have dark spirals on them. And she uses her, you know, because Kari is light, she's able to actually destroy the dark spirals that are on them and free them. At this point in time, the dark, you know, these, you know, Scubamon then change into their much more shadow forms. In the there's 2 different variations of this. You know, they're revealed to be these dark creatures who, in the Japanese setup, they wish to mate with Kari so they can produce powerful offspring to fight the new god. Yeah, I'm like, okay, no. And then, you know, in the English dub, the creatures want to become their new queen, who lead them in a battle against the Dark Ocean's ruler. So, you know, it's either A, they want to mate with her and then produce, you know, half human, half Digimon offspring that can then fight against, I'm assuming they want to fight against either Dragomon, or they want to fight against Ken, one of the two. And then you know, make her their new queen so that way she can fight against Dragomon. One of them, and, you know, I'm like, neither of those are good. Neither of those are a good thing. Thankfully, you know, Kari, or thankfully, TK and Anjumon and Patamon have managed to get into where they get into the Dark Ocean via Kari's, power calling out for them and Gatomon coming in. This is when she digivolves into Angelmon for the first time in that season. And they're able to, drive the, because of her light power and her light in and of itself is able to drive off, the Scubamon and make them return to the depths. And when they leave, then her and Kari and TK and Patamon leave. And, we see Dragomon rise out of the water in the background. He's like, he's not a happy giant Cthulhu origin god, whatever type thing. And can you blame him? I don't. He's got some minions to punish, depending on stuff. And then, as I mentioned, there's the Dark Whirlpool, the Dark Vortex that Ken uses to create Chimeramon to bring it to life, where he interacts with the collected data of Devimon. And then the next main big encounter that they get with the Dark Ocean is, of course, when Kari and Ken and Yoli and their respective Digimon end up kind of getting shifted into that realm. So it's the Digidestin are wandering around, and this is a time frame when they're trying to find the Destiny Stones that Blackboard Greymon is trying to find and destroy. And they end up wandering around in a forest area, and Gatomon recognizes it as the area where she lost her tail ring so many, months ago or whatever. And, so this is like, oh, well, how about we try to find her lost tail ring? And they're just like, okay. And they start looking around, and they end up hearing this screaming, and Kari and Yoli run off, and they find Ken. And Ken is just screaming, and they get him calmed down. And he just explains that he just had like a bad vision or something like that. And he hears it, oh, you're looking for Gatomon's tail ring. This is before Ken has this is after like Ken and Davis can like DNA digivolve together, but Ken hasn't quite gotten to the point where he feels so much more welcome by the other Digidestin. He's still that's still being worked on at this point in time. And what happens is Ken asks if he can help them try to find Gatomon's tail ring, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. And they start looking around, and then they hear what sounds like waves, and they run off. And, well, first everything kind of just goes like kind of sepia tone a little bit. And it's Kari, Yoli, and, Ken and such have been shifted out of the digital world and into the world of darkness. And they end up seeing, like Davis, and like Davis actually he can't hear them anymore, and he actually like runs right through Yoli because he can't see them either. And they're on like different planes. So like Kari, Yoli, and Ken can see, Davis and TK and Cody and their Digimon and stuff, but they can't actually like physically interact with them. So they're like ghosts that still can't even be seen. And, Kari and Ken both hear what sound like waves, and they run off, and Yoli follows them with, their Digimon in tow. And Kari and Ken can then see what looks like the waves of the Dark Ocean. And that's when they realize, oh no, they've been transported into the dark ocean. And, Ken explains that, this is where he falls into despair and darkness due to the influence of, his inner dark self. And Kari, unfortunately, is following suit because of her repressed emotions. And Yoli, even though she can't initially see the ocean, she like starts gets very, very frustrated, and then she's able to see it, and she's like, I wish I hadn't been able to do that. Yeah. And, yeah. And Yoli and Kari, they end up trying, they see something shiny that might be the tail ring, and they try to climb down and find it. And then unfortunately, Ken ends up, Kari and Yoli have interesting conversations, and, there's still all the darkness from the Dark Ocean and everything. And Kari even says at one point that, like, to her and Ken, because Kari is the opposite of darkness, she is light. But kind of the antithesis is that where there is light, there is always going to be darkness. And where there is darkness, there has to be light. Some way, shape, or form. And what, of course, happens is, this basically results to when, like, Yoli slaps Kari. Is where this ends up resulting. But you know, Ken is still very much being affected by the fact that him and Kari and Yuli are still in the Dark Ocean world. And Ken is, of course, still very susceptible to the Dark Ocean because of the fact that he had done so many bad things as the Digimon Emperor, and it feeds on that. It makes him think of those more, and it makes him want to go down that path again. And with Kari, it's, oh, if the Dark Ocean can like get a hold of Kari and get her to go into despair and like snuff out the light, then it would then be able to, you know, have more power, because a Digidestin A would be down one, B, light would be snuffed out because that is the antithesis of darkness. And it's this whole, you know, this yin and yang setup. And, you know, this is, you know, results in, you know, Yoli slapping Kari at one point in time when they end up getting attacked by a Blossomon that's made out of control spires. I went over the Blossomon control spire in the control spire Blossomon in either the control spire video or a couple of other videos at some point in time. But what of course happens is this is where we get Godamon and Aquilamon DNA digivolving into Sylphimon for the first time. And they're, you know, they defeat, you know, Blossomon, and they're able to then return to, you know, the digital world, and they meet up with Ty and the others, or Davis and such and the others again, and they explain what happened. And it's, Yoli basically helps Kari and Ken realize that the darkness will only keep coming if you keep letting it come. And, you know, she, you know, when she slaps Kari, it's, you know, you're, you know, and Yoli's quote is a quote on the end of this video, just because I couldn't really find any other quotes about the Dark Ocean. And you know, Yoli and Kari now are able to bond better, and I think it's also a little bit of a bonding moment for like Kari and Ken and Yoli and Ken. And you know, Kari and Ken, this is where one of the moments where Ken starts realizing that, yeah, it's good to have his friends with him, to have the other Digidestined around him. And you know, this is, you know, it was like he needs to focus more on the good than the bad. General reminder, that's usually a healthier thing to do, but I know that sometimes that's a lot harder to do. And I've mentioned this before, that I kind of look at the you know, the times when Matt and Sora get sucked into the different dark world setups, and when Kari gets here, and when Ken is here and such. I do think that that is kind of like a representation of depression, or at the very least that's how I see it. I know that it's also this concept of like, well, the digital world itself is usually portrayed as like a very good place, and this Dark Ocean is then more portrayed as this more dangerous place, and much more devoid of like light and hope and everything. And you know, so I can see where that's coming from, but I look at it as also like a representation of depression. And it's an interesting way of like explaining depression to kids. Like, oh yeah, I know that you're like sad about this one thing, or sad about this other thing, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be sad about it, and I'm not saying that that's wrong to feel sad about it, or that makes you weak or anything like that. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing that you need to talk about it, but sometimes talking about it might be a good thing for you to do, you know, because like with Matt, he kept taking so much onto himself. Same thing with Sora. So much onto themselves of like, I have to do this, and I have to get Matt, and I have to get, you know, getting back to Ty, and I have to do this other stuff. And, you know, with Matt, it's like, I'm not a good enough big brother for TK. Ty's so much better. And, you know, the other Digidestined, they don't need me. You know, 7's a luckier number than 8. And, you know, all this other stuff that happens. And, you know, I mean, I'm not an expert on depression by any means. Yeah, there's been times in my life when I have been depressed, but not chronically, and not to the point where I ever did anything, you know, dangerous or anything like that. But I've had friends in the past, and still do have friends or family members that have definitely had to, you know, deal with depression. In some cases, I had some of them lose that battle, unfortunately, very badly. But, you know, I also use like these moments where I talk about it was like, just, you know, just talk to people, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to a therapist. It's not a bad thing. It's not weak. It's a good thing for you to unbox those feelings. And the same thing with Kari. She, you know, she holds so much, you know, so much inside of her, that's why the Dark Ocean was able to pull her in, because she was so just keeping so much of that inside of her. And with Ken, you know, there's the stuff there that he did as the Digimon Emperor that the Dark Ocean can again like feed off of and try to force him to go back down that path. And we do see this kind of being where Ken is actually kind of forced to go into this mode, forced to delve into this when they are fighting against Daemon. Later on in the series, there's this last-ditch effort that they have to use to be able to defeat Daemon, and they're like, well, we can send him in the digital world, but then he'd just come back, and we're not strong enough at this point in time to be able to defeat him. So we have to trap him. And this is when Ken has to then like tap into like the darkness inside of him to then use his Digivice to open a portal to the Dark Ocean. And then that's when they send Daemon into the Dark Ocean. This is during the time frame when a bunch of a bunch of the Digimon, the Daemon cores, Lady Devimon and Marine Devimon and Skull Saturomon, excuse me, and Daemon are like terrorizing everyone, and when like they have to try to save Ken from being kidnapped by Oikawa, and there's the Dark Spore Children introduced, and that whole setup of like 2 or 3 episodes of dealing with the Daemon core there. And Ken has to tap into the darkness to open up a portal there, and they send Daemon through, putting it into his threat that he posed to Earth, but he's still kind of, he can probably get out of the Dark Ocean at some point in time. It's probably a bit harder for him to get out of the Dark Ocean, but I'm assuming he still has the ability to. And then, Ken had to like tap into the darkness, but he also has to, he, has his friends that help him, kind of come back from that or shut up, phone. But they also have it that, Ken had to, open the portal and send Daemon through and everything. And there's still a fair amount of stuff in there in regards to, Ken had to tap into the darkness, and that our darkness is still always there. The Dark Ocean never gets destroyed. It's still there. And even after the digital world is rebooted in Digimon Tri, the Dark Ocean is still there. Because the Dark Ocean, where there are Digimon that live there, is not directly, affected by, I think, if the digital world got rebooted. And, because we see the Dark Ocean in Digimon Adventure Tri, because Maki Himekawa, after she's gone and interacted with Tapirmon, that the reboot revived him, she tries to have him remember who she is, but it doesn't work, and then she becomes so depressed, she basically breaks, and I mentioned this in Diego's video, that she just kind of breaks. And she does end up finding herself stranded in the digital world because, stranded in the Dark Ocean because Tapirmon failed to remember her. And she, somehow she has like a bazooka and a gun with her. Well, she's an agent, so I can understand the gun. But somehow she has a bazooka, and she like fires it at like the Scubamon, trying to defend herself from them. And she, defends herself from them, but then she like drifts away into the Dark Ocean, and we don't know what happened to her. We never see her again. We never see the Dark Ocean again at that point in time, as far as I'm aware, because it doesn't even get referenced in Digimon The Last Evolution. I am assuming that at some point Dragomon is still out there. The same thing with his Scubamon, and that either Maki died or I don't know. That's actually probably the better case scenario, is Maki died. Otherwise, the Scubamon and Dragomon captured her, which is probably not a good thing. Which is definitely not a good thing. And the Dark Ocean is a very interesting concept to me. I don't 100%. I never want to go there for vacation, that's for sure. Although I burn very easily, so I don't think I'd have to worry about sunburning, though, if I went there, because it doesn't appear to have enough light to sunburn anything. And again, I know that the Dark Ocean, I think it's referenced in some of the games at times, but I don't think that it ever gets brought up in any of the other Digimon series, as far as I can remember. I know the other Digimon series have also, to a degree, touched upon different aspects of depression, and I kind of like that they do that. But yeah, I think the Dark Ocean, and not Dragomon himself because he's just like the ruler of the Dark Ocean and he has his Scubamon that are his servants and everything. But the Dark Ocean in general, in my opinion, has always kind of represented depression, or not mental instability, but because I mean, like, I don't want to make light of mental instability because I never want to do that, because I am well aware of the fact that it can be a very, very bad thing if you um, don't deal with that type of thing, or if you bottle it up inside. So yeah, just general reminder: make sure to talk about if you have problems. I know that for some people that's a lot harder to do than others for various reasons, but that's just sometimes it's a very good thing to get your problems off your chest and try to sort through those emotions and realize that you don't have to carry the entire world on your shoulders, which is what Sora did and kind of what Kari did. So Matt's was just more internalized in regards to him not thinking that he was good enough to be with the other Digidestined. And with Ken, of course, it was this, depression also again eating away at him because of his brother's death and because he always blamed himself for his brother's death. And eventually, he does get over that, of course, ironically with some help from Malamyotismon. But, that's what we have there. So I thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!
That's enough of that nonsense. Of course you're strong enough. You're the strongest person I've ever known. And if you think I'm going to sit by and let you run on yourself like that, you can just think again. We'll fight it together, Kari. The darkness will never beat you. Do you hear me?